Hello and welcome to Across the Formation, your best NFL British podcast from talkSPORT.
Quite a claim after 5 weeks.
Isn't it? I think so. Such a claim that last week we were in the studio and this week we're not. So read into that what you will. It may have something or nothing to do with one of us has potential dysentery, but that's
Yeah, the city of Seattle might have great defenses, but apparently it doesn't have great culinary options because I wasn't able to come into the studio. We're already recording this a day late, and then I'm still not able to make it into the studio because I feel as rough as old dogs. I've been unwell for like 3 days, so sorry guys. We're back in our bedrooms again, but
you're forgiven, mate. How was it?
It was sensational. Yeah, I mean, Seattle is a great city. I've been there a few times. Been there with Ollie for a Packers game. Been there for the Week 17 Dre Greenlaw half-yard line game, and then again, and the atmosphere's phenomenal. The noise in there's phenomenal. You can really see. I feel like it's a Mike McDonald thing now that Pete Carroll's moved on, but having a home playoff game for the first time in 5 years. Yeah, I got into the lift at one point, and Cam Chancellor and Doug Baldwin were in the lift with us, and then there were so many members like the Legion and Boom and stuff, and after all
pick them up here. So
after all the falling outs they had, I was only in the lift with them. I said hello, but it wasn't like I was really annoyed. I didn't try and seek out Richard Sherman because I'd heard he was going to be there, but then we didn't see him with all the other alumni, and I'd seen he'd done a podcast earlier that day, so I was like, oh, maybe he's not going to be here. And then I was up and we started the broadcast, and Adam Rhodes, good buddy of all of ours, who was there helping us with some camera stuff, he was down doing some filming on the sideline, and Sherman was down there, and I was like, feels like my opportunity missed to try and capitalize on the momentum of him being, tweeting our commentary and stuff. But it's all good. It's all good. It was an amazing occasion. It's an amazing city. We had a lovely time. I just, doing a 51-hour round trip to go and call a game where over 24 hours of that is spent either in the air or in an airport is not something I'd like to do too regularly. Certainly if the 49ers had somehow eked out a miracle victory, I would have been back doing the exact same thing again this weekend, which might have actually killed me. But instead, we're going to enjoy the three of us going out with the boys, etc.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's going to be so much fun. Look, it would have made the chip much sweeter had the 49ers won, and it just was a game too far, wasn't it, Will?
Yeah, we'll get into it because what we're going to do is our kind of instead of our things we learned from the weekend this weekend, we're going to do our one big question for the eliminated teams. We're then going to go around the head coaching carousel because it's been such a wild week with Sean McDermott out at the Bills, with the two former MVPs, the last three MVPs, in fact, all being available for their head coaching jobs being available, and some great and some fascinating hires as well. So we'll get into that, and then we'll do a brief preview of the championship games as well. So I'll get into it a little bit, but yeah, it definitely felt like even from moment one, from the Rashid Shaheed, 13 seconds to that game, they scored more points than we managed to score in the next 3 hours. So it was definitely the step too far. The question now is it a passing of the torch moment? I think we'll find out this weekend against the Rams, or is this just going to now be, for the next 5+ years, the most competitive division in football? It's already been pretty sensational for the last kind of 5 to 10, but you've added a third team back into the mix now with Mike McDonald, and they are a sight to behold. So we'll get into all of it, but yeah, it was a sensational time, and thank you to the Seahawks, and thank you to the 49ers for everything they did. But yeah, I'm glad to be back on UK soil for another 10 days or so before we head out to Santa Clara.
And no problems flying over Greenland? Everything
no
was
problems
fine?
flying over Greenland. That might have been my most responded to Instagram story of the whole weekend. Not being on the sideline, not doing that. People thought that was hilarious. And it was actually Ollie Hunter who suggested, he was like, wanted to see on the map when we were flying over Greenland. And it inspired an Insta story of saying, I swear we're just having a flyover, nothing else. Yeah, that was funny. Well done, mate.
I mean, the UK government should just leave you there as public relations with the US.
Well, do you know what? It was funny. There were a few occasions where actually legitimately got recognised for the commentary clips. So A couple of them were like people in the media, and you kind of half expect that. I saw Kevin Kugler, the excellent Westwood One commentator, who was doing the game for Westwood One after the game, and I just went up and kind of introduced myself and said hello to him, and kind of said, look, I host the radio coverage back in the UK with a couple of other guys, and we take your calls every week, and And his producer, when I was in kind of the middle of my spiel, came over and went, "Oh, are you the guy that broke the internet last week?" I was like, well. Like just really like making you like, yeah, it's obviously a lovely thing that people recognize you, but yeah, you in classic British fashion, when that happens in front of your mates, you then get rinsed for an extended period of time afterwards. It happened a few times, but then there was the weirdest time, because it wasn't a media person, was just we were walking the bags out of the stadium back to the car, and some random Seahawks fan at a traffic light just went, "Are you British?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was saying, "Oh, you're the guy." And I was like,
Yeah, you are the guy.
I'm the guy. That's me. So yeah, it's been lovely, and it's been weird, and I'm excited about the Super Bowl. But I'm quite happy that for the first time this season, really, we're just going to be able to enjoy the games this weekend and not have work to do. So it's lovely.
Well, yeah, 32 became 4, and there's loads and loads of storylines and things to talk about. And as Will said earlier, we'll get into the head coaching carousel, and we'll look ahead briefly to the weekend's games. But I think we should start with like the main questions that we have from these games. Sam, let's start with you. What's the main thing that you learned, and where do you want to start?
Well, my main question is how the hell is Brandon Beane still in a job, let alone getting promoted? I mean, oh my God. I mean, to be fair, like, I've seen some reports this week. There's a guy called Vic Carucci of WGRZ. He's like a local Buffalo reporter there. And he basically let wind of a meeting that happened about 5 weeks ago between McDermott, Beane and Pegula. And McDermott basically suggested that this roster he's got at the moment is nowhere near good enough to win a Super Bowl. And I think, according to this Vic Carucci, neither Pegula or Beane were very pleased with those comments. So I don't know if that has kind of started the rift to where we are now. But Brandon Beane needs to look at himself. Since 2018, he's only drafted 2 Pro Bowl players. That is not the quality you need. I mean, that's the argument right there for Sean McDermott. The only elite receiver Josh Allen's ever had was Stephon Diggs. And like, no respect to the likes of Khalil Shakir, Robert Woods, John Brown, Sammy Watkins, Zay Jones, and Cole Beasley, who have never had a Pro Bowl appearance between them. He's had to do it all by himself. And McDermott has kind of had the sword fall on his neck. But all you need to do is read the room if you're the Bills head office. Like, not one, well, I'd say probably 1 or 2% of the Bills mafia were happy with this decision. You look all over the social media, they're all in tears. They're all saying, bring it back, it's not too late. It's just, I feel like it's really harsh. And we were talking off air, Will, and you kind of said, look, you were okay with the McDermott firing as long as they just clean house completely. Mm-hmm. Do you know what? I could understand that, but what they've done has made absolutely no sense. What he's kind of done for them. I mean, I've got the stats here. He led Buffalo to 8 playoff appearances, including 7 consecutive, 5 division titles, 2 FC Championship game appearances. The problem here isn't McDermott. It's I mean, he's done well to even get them to that point with Josh Allen alone. I just think it's ridiculous what they've done. And I hope that it isn't a case of be careful what you wish for in terms of the Bills head office.
It was fascinating about it is that you mentioned that Pro Bowler stat. That's since 2018, because the first draft, in fact, Sean McDermott's first draft in 2017, when he first came in, they got Tre'Davious White, they got Dion Dawkins, they got Matt Milano, all in the same draft, all of whom have been potentially, Tre'Davious White obviously has gone on to play quite a bit of football elsewhere, but those are guys who could have all been Bills Ring of Honor guys, and hey, at least one of those could end up being a Hall of Famer, and Dion Dawkins potentially, I think probably Hall of Very Good, borderline. 2018 was the first draft with Brandon Beane there, but it was very much a case of like that was still a Sean McDermott draft. They went and got Josh Allen, which a lot of people thought was the wrong pick at that position. Tremaine Edmonds, Wyatt Teller, Harrison Phillips, another good draft. And then beyond that, they've never really, they've had some okay draft classes. Like 2022 was a decent class, but like the last 3 have been absolutely barren. The cupboards are pretty bare there. And you said it. My feeling is like, I understand that when you've had as little playoff success as they've had, when you are the most winningest head coach in the franchise's regular season, but you're 8-8 in the playoffs, and you've only ever made a championship game once, I think, and then none of that is good enough for what you've had there and what you've been able to do. But I am very much a fan of clearing house, and I think this head coaching cycle, as much as people are super blown away by it and how exciting it is, and how fun it is, and how wild it is truly mad to me that we have 10 head coaching positions open and only 2 GM positions. And you can go through them individually, and some of them are understandable, like the Raiders. They only brought in Spytek last season. He's Brady's old college roommate. They were always going to give him a chance with a second guy. But a lot of the others who are out there, a lot of the others that I just don't understand how they're not both moving on from both, or moving on from the GM and keeping the head coach in some cases. I think Greg Rosendahl says this very well, but it just shows that the position it pays off to be sat in the stadium, particularly if things aren't going as well as you want it to be, is next to the owner in their ear, like the GMs tend to be. And you've seen it time and time again across the league this season. It's made a difference to these hirings. And I think the Bills have made a massive, massive error. And it's the thing that stops that job. For me, with Josh Allen there, and you consider the Ravens' position, it became the most desirable job on the market with the new stadium move and everything else. Alongside the Ravens, I think you could debate between the two, but the Brandon Beane thing does concern me massively. If I were interviewing for that job, that would be a serious issue for me. But maybe you'll end up with a John Harbaugh situation, which we'll get into a little later.
Give it 5 years, Will. You never know where you're going to be by then.
Yeah, probably. Look, I don't per se have a problem with the firing of McDermott. If Beane went as well, then it's far more palatable and far more understandable. McDermott hasn't been able to get Josh Allen and the Bills over this playoff hump. What is it, 7 in a row? 7 playoffs. Getting to the playoffs is brilliant, right? And lots of teams in the NFL would love to get to the playoffs 7, 8, 9 times, however many it's been in a row, and toppling the New England Patriots, albeit with Tom Brady leaving and Gronk going and then Belichick going, toppling them was such an achievement in itself. But as is my feelings towards Matt LaFleur and how it's gone stale there, and he hasn't been able to get over the hump with the Green Bay, and that's maybe why they should move on. They're not going to. I think it makes a bit of sense to move on from Sean McDermott, despite the problems and issues and that he's had to deal with when it comes to roster construction and things like that. But that's in conjunction with getting rid of Beane. Now, if you're not going to get rid of Beane, getting rid of McDermott doesn't make too much sense to me, because he knows the organization, and he knows Josh Allen, and sometimes better the devil and all of that. So I get it if it was both of them, but just McDermott and not Beane is bizarre to me.
I agree. What's your big question then, Oliver?
Well, I think the thing that we need to talk about is, I'm sorry, Will Gavin, it's the San Francisco 49ers. Now, look, they're going to have a really decent amount of cap space next season. There are players that marquee players that aren't going to affect the cap if you get rid of them. So you might as well just keep them on. Players like Nick Bosa, George Kittle, he's a legend, and they'll wait until October, November and find out when he's available for. But players like Juwan Jennings, who was their leading touchdown scorer this season, you could argue that they should move on from him. They're not going to be affected by getting rid of Brandon Ayuk, because they can void those guarantees, and because of his behavior. The worry is that Kyle Shanahan, who is this offensive genius or this play calling genius, this guy who has had a brilliant time in San Francisco and did incredibly well given all of the injuries across the entire team this season. But the real worry is not being able to score more than 17 points against the Seattle Seahawks, Mike McDonald seeming to have his number. It's a really nice young defense, but on offense, it feels like, despite Christian McCaffrey, staying injury free, and this is the first season for 2 or 3 seasons that's happened, couldn't really get things going because 450 touches across the season for McCaffrey. We know what that looks like the next season, and then production, good quality production, decreasing the next season. Jake Tonjes is going to have to step in. They're going to have to re-up on wide receivers. Are they going to bring in someone like a George Pickens, or maybe even like a Romeo Dobbs? They're going to have to draft well in that area. They're going to have to look at the offensive line. I think there are a lot of questions on offense, way more than on defense. And then defense-wise, their head coach has naffed off to the Tennessee Titans. So what's going to happen there? I think the 49ers is one big question, but there are so many small questions within that to see how they're going to bounce back. And in a really, really competitive division in the NFC West. The one team I do feel really sorry for is the Arizona Cardinals, because they're in that division and an utter dumpster fire. But
and no one seems to want to be their head coach. Apparently,
no one wants to be their head coach.
Two guys who they've had face-to-face interviews booked with, who have gone and said, "No, I'm not going to come for the interview. I'm just going to take the job that's available to me immediately." Yeah, listen, I think it's obviously a huge off-season for them. I think that was going to be the case going into this year, no matter what, because they are in a they're one of those weird teams. I think like Buffalo will be like this, the Ravens will be like this year, who are in a rebuild while still being talented enough to be a contender. And as you know, I believe, and I think, football knowers believe, that Brock Purdy is a good enough quarterback to talk about in that top 8, top 10 range. And when you have a guy who's in that range, you want to be a contender every year, right? You believe you can be. The two things they need to really work on this offseason for me, you were right. Defensively, the rookie class that came through this year, Alfred Collins, CJ West, Upton Stout, Marcus Siegler, and even the second-year guys, Malik Mustafa, Ronaldo Green, I think, like, as bad as that defense was this past weekend and the 2 games against Seattle against the run, I think the amount they will have learnt this year from coming into that rotation, I think, will be huge. Michael Williams, I think, will be huge, a re-addition when he's added. I think that they need to look in free agency potentially at the wide receiver position, although I'm not super excited about like the class this year outside of Pickens. They need speed. It was so clear they need team speed based on that performance this weekend. And there's a lot of ifs and buts. Will Ricky Pierce stay healthy? Will Trent Williams stay healthy? How quickly does George Kittle come back? All of that stuff does come into it. But there is definitely a path where, with the right hire at defensive coordinator, with another good draft, and I think they've had 2 back-to-back good drafts, but they've been good, not great. They've been like lots of good complementary pieces, but no superstars, right? They could really do with drafting a really great pass rusher or a really great wide receiver. That's kind of the 2 big keys. And it's getting that defensive coordinator hire right. I mean, for me, when I was first debating it, I was like, I was looking at the kind of young, up-and-coming Mike McDonald's tree type guy. He's not necessarily a guy from McDonald's tree necessarily directly, but those guys who are, Robert Saleh, for as much as I love him as a man manager, as brilliantly as he's done with this injured and banged-up team, they run disguises in the coverage at the lowest rate of the entire NFL. They run blitz and stunts at a very low rate as well. They are a very basic defense that really show you their hand and hope that their guys are going to beat your guys. And if 13 games a season, that might work for you. But when you come up against the best, they are going to be able to out-scheme you. The guy I really want in the building, as much as he's a bit of a Robbie Savage, Joey Barton type, in that when he's on your team, you love him. When he's not on your team, you hate him.
I'm going to say, by the way, that's harsh on Robbie Savage to be thrown into. and not often
I meant in his playing days.
No, fine,
I shouldn't have mentioned Barton. Forget him. He's turned into an awful human being.
Yeah.
But when I meant in his playing days.
Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah.
Jim Schwartz, throw the bag at Jim Schwartz. I just think he is perfect for that system there, that fit there. And also, he's very unlikely to get a head coaching job in a year's time. Like, he's a guy who probably won't have another crack at a head coach job, even if he wants it. I like the idea of them going and getting like their Steve Spagnuolo, the kind of guy who actually the league are trying to go younger and sexier, and Jim Swartz will just come in and run a great defense and be super aggressive. And so that would be the guy I'd love them to throw the bag at. I don't know if they're as bold as that. I don't know if Jed York is going to be as bold as that, but we'll see. I do think there is a path to them being a really great team again next year, but they're in a division with the two teams in the NFC Championship game. So, like the NFC West, the first ever division with 3 12-win teams. So, it's all up in the air. It's if we could go and compete with this roster, this team, this coaching staff in the NFC East, I'd be sitting here much more confident of a shot at the 1 seed, a shot of the winning that division and everything else. But 4 of your hardest games come against your division rivals every year. So yeah, big question. I think they're one of the most interesting teams this offseason. But unlike what we've seen in Buffalo and like what we've seen with the staleness and the changes in Pittsburgh, I think they're right to stick with Shanahan for now. And I still think that they can rebuild and be a great team from here.
Yeah, look, you mentioned Pickens. I think Pickens would be the ideal given his length, and almost not. I think the injury to CeeDee Lamb really set him back this season in that Cowboys offense. But George Pickens really picks up the mantle, so I think he's a guy that a lot of teams will be looking at. So but that's the kind of profile you need, that bigger bodied but quicker receiver. That is the guy that, another almost tight endy sized receiver that Brock Purdy can use as a jump ball guy, because Tonjes was sort of that guy for a bit, but drops aside.
I'll go to bat for Jake Tonjes, and I'm aware that we're spending a lot of time on this. The fumble at the weekend was a backbreaker, undoubtedly, but he also had 2 huge third down pickups. And this season, when targeted on third down, this season when he was targeted on third down prior to this weekend's game, I haven't actually added the stats in from this weekend yet. With George Kittle out of the lineup, he was targeted 10 times on third down. He had 7 receptions for 69 yards, and every single one of them went for first down. Like, he was absolute money in those situations. And Brock's best throw of the whole game was that layered throw over Nick Emenwari into Jake Tonjes' hands over the middle. And I trust him in those situations. The fumble was killer, but it was at a time when every bit of momentum was going against the team. And it just felt like, a further gut punch after the pick up on 3rd and 2 due to the stupid penalty, after the I'm not even gonna, if I sit here and break down that game again, I'm gonna break down. But
buddy,
I'll tell you what I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. And as a man who came into the season as a Caleb Williams disbeliever, he had this season some of the greatest moments, some of the greatest comebacks. Arguably, if you were to do a top 5 throws of the season, 4 of them might be from Caleb Williams this year. Certainly 4 of the top 10, if we're doing it that way. That included the game-tying play, of course. Unbelievable. And I think you do have to take a huge amount of the responsibility for the interception in overtime off his plate, because DJ Moore went and did DJ Moore things. Something we've not seen him do as much this season. He really, under Ben Johnson, it felt like he'd really picked up that off-the-ball effort issue that he'd had the previous season that was a real problem. And for him to give up on that route in that situation, particularly considering it's overtime in a playoff game, is borderline disgusting. Williams was still slightly off target with the throw, but at least DJ Moore should be competing for that ball. So that was a bit of a joke. I think he is going to continue to be a guy who will have the highs and lows within a game, who will continue to gunsling, who will continue to be a Brett Favre level guy of excitement, where the interception numbers will always remain reasonably high. So will the touchdown numbers. So will the ridiculous plays. So will the amazing throws from arm angles. But when I consider the job Ben Johnson has done this year to get them to the divisional round, when I consider the improvements on that defense, which is still looking undermanned, but did an excellent job under Dennis Allen, and when I consider just how good that offense has looked for large stretches under Ben Johnson, I think next season they will be a similar record team without having to rely on the ridiculous fourth quarter comebacks. And I have gone from being the biggest Bears disbeliever to kind of thinking the Bears can be a competitive team for the next few years. And that is, it might sound like damning with faint praise, but of these teams that have been eliminated this weekend, 3 of them have huge question marks, and one of them, I think, hold their head high, losing against a very good football team in a very difficult situation at a position that no one expected them to get to. So I'm really just saying, well done, Chicago.
I think you kind of look at those teams as well, and you think with some of them, oh God, was that their last chance there? Whereas you look at the Bears and you're thinking, well, they're only going to go up from here. But this is the beginning for them. And as you said, I think 4 of those throws this year, you can put them in the Hall of Fame. They were unreal. And I know I mentioned it last week, but he reminds me so much of Aaron Rodgers, like down to the T. Every small thing he does, the throws
I'm
he
sure
makes.
Ollie is loving these Packers quarterback comparisons that both you and I are making.
I know. The throws he makes on the move or in the pocket, even the minor details of how he ran backwards out of the pocket to make that ridiculous throw take to overtime. Like it looked, if I had taken my glasses off and you were just showing me some highlight reels of him this year and told me it was Aaron Rodgers, I'd fully believe you. And I've got a hot take. I'm going next year for him to be the 2026 MVP.
Ooh, baby.
I'm going early.
My problem with the Rodgers comparison is that the one thing Rodgers did for his whole career was looked after the ball to a point where it was a point of frustration at times. Like, I wished he would be more of a gunslinger, which is why I made the Favre comparison. But he's actually kind of a blend between the two, both positively and negatively. It's weird, that, isn't it? He loved Aaron Rodgers growing up, and he was a bit of a Packers fan. So
just look at Ollie's face.
Well, he was a Green Bay Packers fan. Guys, you know there's those 4 throws that Caleb Williams has made that go doing the rounds, and they are, people are saying you're saying they're Hall of Fame plays, which is ridiculous. 2 of those are really, really good. One of those,
4 of them are really good, mate. You're right. Sorry, the level of bias coming through here is astonishing. This is
how about you let me finish?
Embarrass himself. Let him embarrass himself.
One of those was really nice. The one where he went out to the right hand side, through across his body, lovely. Should have been picked. And then the one that people are going nuts about, and no one, and people are, I think, aren't thinking beyond the situation and how it looked and when it was. And that is the one from the weekend.
I disagree. I could not disagree more on this.
How about you just let me finish? So he runs backwards. He's scrambling around. Then he literally, it's a really good throw. He throws it to the back of the end zone.
Throw.
And he throws it to the back of the end zone where he's hoping that his guy makes a play. Komet does a little push off. The DB bites on it. This isn't
poor from you. This is.
Well, get ready to get him.
Let me tell you, Ollie Hunter. Ollie Hunter, do something for me. Do something for me. Go and watch Stacey Dale's amazing end zone view of that shot where she filmed it from the sideline, because then you will see that the TV camera angle that makes it look like Quentin Lake is way off in coverage actually shows that Quentin Lake was quite well positioned, and it's a perfectly layered throw into the exact position it needed to be with an incredible amount of vision, considering how difficult it was because he was scrambling, and he was 26 yards behind the line of scrimmage, the deepest throw that's ever been made behind the line of scrimmage in the next gen era, and all of that. My first reaction was the same as yours, and then the more I've seen it, the better that throw gets rather than the opposite. The only problem is it might be the second best throw this weekend, because the Drake May to Keishon Boutte throw is just an absolute thing of beauty. Like it's no
luck involved in that one, whereas there's a lot of luck involved in the Caleb Williams one. Yeah, but because of when it was, ridiculous. People are like, "Oh my God, it's the greatest throw ever." Look, he threw it to the back corner of the end zone, hoping that the guy would make the break there. A lot of things happened to work out for him, and they all worked out, and it happened to be game tying, and all of that. It's not as great as everyone is making out.
I would love to see you make that same argument had Jordan Love made the exact same throw.
And the problem is Jordan Love hasn't made enough of those throws this year, which was his bread and butter before this.
Now you're just lashing out. Lashing out.
Look. What's interesting about it, because I think this has been it's a fascinating point of topic, and I think the offseason, when we get into our quarterback tiers and quarterback rankings, which we definitely will be doing, it's going to be, I think there's going to be a bit of a bun fight when you get past about 8 onwards, because there's so many guys that could be considered top tier, but so many knocks against them. But there's one guy who we need to talk about, who, coming out of his first season in the NFL, people were all ready to call a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Coming out of year 3, and I'm going to come to Ollie Hunter first on this because he had the strongest opinion of this in our group this weekend, just to pull back the curtain a little bit on a production perspective. The guy who has gone from being top 10 after season 1 to now being a guy who might not even be top 20 based on his recent performances is amazingly CJ Stroud.
So CJ Stroud was great in year 1. He had an offensive line that kept him relatively upright. It was still leaky, and he looked really splashy. He happened to have a really good receiver in Nico Collins available and fit and whatnot. But there were issues there, and I did say that the Texans would have a drop-off. I even gambled a night out with Will Gavin on it.
I will go out as far as to say, prior to Jaden Daniels' season last year, it was in the conversation for the best rookie season that we'd ever seen, certainly of the last 20 years. Like, he was phenomenal. But what I will say on the back end of that, before you get into what's happened with the play beyond that, is that what happened is he went on this postseason media tour where he was very open and very honest and broke down plays and talked about other teams. And not only was this guy a great quarterback that had lifted a much maligned franchise who had this whole Deshaun Watson situation hanging over their head and turned them around instantly in one season, but it also turned out he was super smart and super charismatic and everything else that went along with that. And I think the football world fell in love with this guy. And maybe for the last 2 years, up until the last 5 or 6 weeks, we've had the blinkers on a little bit.
I think the football world has. And he has been massively found out. Utterly frazzled under pressure. 4 interceptions.
4 interceptions, Jeremy. That's insane.
9 QB hits. 14 passes deflected. Okay, the New England defense was great, and their game plan against him was so good. Get in his face, make him frazzled. Texans should have taken him out after that first half.
100%. 100%. Do you think as well, a performance like that as well on that stage is enough to effectively end some careers in terms of you just mentally? Like, to go on from that, like, it was genuinely one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen.
We talk about head coaches, things getting stale for head coaches and they're moving on. It utterly happens with QBs as well. Look at what's happened to Sam Darnold. New environment, new place, and he's thriving. CJ Stroud needs to get out of that building, needs to rebuild his career, go and be a backup somewhere. Texans have to move on because you cannot have that guy going into a playoff situation again because he's just not good enough at the moment. We know he's got the fundamentals from that rookie season, but he's just not that good anymore.
I have to say, this season, what really stands out to me is not just beyond the not that good anymore, because I think he clearly still has the potential to be a great quarterback, but he has gone from the position where normally a rookie who's picked that high, who's put a franchise on his back like he did in year 1, they get to the end of year 3, they're eligible for a contract. He should be this offseason signing a $50+ $60+ million a year contract for 5+ years with that organization. Right now, if I'm the Texans, I'm picking up the 5th-year option and I'm seeing what I've got by the end of next year. Like, he now has to have a prove-it year beyond this season, which is mad. They're talking about potentially moving on from Nick Caley, which I saw D'Amico Ryans was asked about it in the post-game press conference, or maybe on his Monday press conference this week. And he said that he gave that really glossed over answer of, we need to evaluate all of the coaching situation. I think what really stands out with CJ Stroud this year is that when they hired Nick Caley, he didn't seem to be involved in those conversations. And it was very clear, very early doors, that there was a complete clash of styles between what Nick Caley wanted to run and what CJ Stroud wanted to run. And almost like football philosophies sat at the wrong end to each other. And Nick Caley ended up bending his will to go with what CJ Stroud wanted to do, to simplify things, to make it much more of like the offense Joe Burrow wants to run. Like that's how he moved it. And then Davis Mills comes in when he goes down in week 7, week 8. has 2 really good games where Nick
Good.
Cayley reintroduces a load of that Patriot stuff and I thought ran a really good offense. And then you notice when CJ Stroud came back in, they actually had a few good weeks with Stroud before this last couple of absolute calamities where they were running a bit of a hybrid version and they were running more of the Cayley stuff. And it was starting to come together. And I thought, right, okay, this is it. This is the click moment. This is the CJ Stroud gets back on to where he needed to be. They made changes on that offensive line to like, moving Titus Howard inside and him going down in that game was tough, but like it felt like things were starting to come together. And that's why in the first week we did this podcast, turned around and said, I think the Texans might be the best team in the AFC. And that Texans team, if that Texans team from like week 12 played the Patriots yesterday, I think they'd probably win that game of football. But instead, we get a version of the offense where, like you say, I mean, the pass rush in New England has been nothing to write home about this season. And yet they were constantly in CJ Stroud's face in that bad weather. And I think you're right. There's an argument he should have been pulled in the second half because actually I think Davis Mills might have offered you more in that situation. So, I don't know. I'm not saying you move on from him, but I am saying it's completely adjusted how you should be approaching that side of the ball for the next 2 years. And that maybe at the end of next season, even with the 5th round option, you look at yourself and say, I bet somebody will still pay a 1st round pick for CJ Stroud because of what he has been and because of what he is in draft capital and everything else. And I think we think about rebuilding and moving away from him.
I think whatever they've got to do, they've got to get it right because when you've got a window to win a Super Bowl, and they certainly do with that defense, they ain't going to be around together for too long before it starts getting picked apart. So, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him.
And his
Sorry, go on.
Just going to say very quickly, one of his biggest problems is he's not a mobile QB. You never think of Stroud as being able to avoid pressure, to using his legs and doing stuff with his legs. He's like a really bad version of Jordan Love.
It's weird. I thought his pocket presence and his pocket manipulation was quite good in year 1. I actually it was one of the things I liked about him, and it's just completely gone out the window.
Absolutely,
and there's an element to me where if I didn't know about some of the off the field stuff, if I didn't know about some of the stuff with Nick Cayley, where I'd be going, oh my God, the Texans have done a David Carr. They failed to protect a quarterback and they've fallen off a cliff. But I do wonder if CJ Stroud himself is as much of an issue to do with that as the team building around him. And as much as what they should do this offseason is work to fix those offensive issues, because we know how great the defense is already, and that they're actually okay on the free agency front. Do I actually believe he's going to be able to come back? I think he's smart enough, but it's going to have to take just a whole big personal turnaround this offseason.
100%. Right, let's get on to the coaching carousel because there's been so many appointments in the last 8 days that we've not spoken or not been on here. Sam Harris, I know you wanted to talk about John Harbaugh to the Giants.
Yeah, well, I mean, unlike Sean McDermott, who's had nothing other than Josh Allen to work with, John Harbaugh's had a wealth of talent pretty much every season since he's been the head coach of the Ravens, and yet only managed to win 1 championship. And I think Giants fans are acting like they've got the second coming of Jesus right now. And I just don't really see it. I mean, if you can't get a tune out of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, or even get them to the playoffs, what do you expect him to do with Jackson Dart and Tyron Tracy Jr.? I just think everyone needs to kind of calm down on this John Harbaugh, what we're about to see, the John Harbaugh Giants experience. I can't see it going well, maybe because the Giants are the Giants, but I just think that Harbaugh's career is going in one direction at the moment, and it's probably not the way that the Giants want it to be. And I think they probably would have done better with someone like Sean McDermott, but I know obviously they'd hired him before Sean had been fired. So
and John Harbaugh, I'm sure, would have loved the Bills job if he'd known that was going to be available, if he'd just held fire for a couple more days. I disagree on Harbaugh. I like him more than that. I do think situations get stale, like we've seen with Mike Tomlin, like we've seen with John Harbaugh. Like I said about Tomlin last week, I would like to have seen him maybe take a year out and go and kind of restock his personal coaching coffers and go and learn from some of the young guys around the league, etc. But they are an organization, the New York Giants, and there are a few like this. Like Harbaugh was a perfect person for someone like the Giants, someone like the Raiders, who's just going to be able to come in and just give you a high floor immediately. Can he win a Super Bowl there? I don't know. But I think it's a huge improvement over what they've had over the last few years in Dable, who's a decent offensive mind, but is one of the most emotional coaches in the NFL and I think struggles to run a building, to going to John Harbaugh, who is going to be the ultimate professional. So what I do love about it is that they decided to keep Joe Shane, and then basically John Harbaugh's come in, and he's not quite done what they did in Jacksonville and made them kick the GM out, but he has basically gone, no. I'm having the power, not him.
Love it. $100 million contract over 5 years is something not to be sniffed at as well.
He better win a Super Bowl for that.
The difference is, unlike the Raiders, he'll see out all of that. Like, it won't be like, the Raiders who are still paying John Gruden $10 million this year and still paying Chip Kelly $6 million next year, and are still, there won't be any of that nonsense.
And I think the Raiders, you mentioned the Raiders, I think they've probably had their noses burnt really from going down the old coach hire with Pete Carroll, and maybe we should expect someone a little bit younger to go into that building. Someone fun could have been Mike McDaniel, who rumors have it, Will Gavin, might be off to the LA Chargers.
Yeah, he's still in for head coaching opportunities. So he's still got some second interviews with people. And I think he's still planning to take those interviews from what we understand. But I love this move from a Los Angeles perspective. Like, Jim Harbaugh has never coached with a different OC to Greg Roman in his time in the NFL. And I thought that relationship should have died after Super Bowl 47. Like, Greg Roman, at that point, 12, 13 years ago, was already running an outdated offense in the modern NFL, especially considering he had a quarterback like Colin Kaepernick, where you could run so many interesting elements of the run game. And they did do some good read option stuff, but like, they got a good young offensive mind in there. I think they could have been so exciting and probably could have gone to the Super Bowl the following season. I love the move. I said this on Twitter, but I'm going to repeat my own line. The move from Greg Roman to Mike McDaniels is like going from checkers to 3D chess. It's honestly like Justin Herbert is going to get to throw loads of deep balls, but he's going to get a decent run game. And if they invest on the interior of that line, I'd love to see a new center. I'd love to see a new guard there, whether that's free agency, whether that's the draft. Like, if they get the right kind of players in there, that could be a huge jump for an offense this season that already wasn't bad because Justin Herbert is so special, but suddenly he's not going to be getting hit 50 more times than any other quarterback in the NFL, or whatever that ridiculous stat was I gave out the other week. And yeah, I absolutely love that hire. I thought he might be an option to go in with Robert Saleh in Tennessee if he wanted an offensive coordinator job, because Cam Ward is a really exciting possibility to work with. The Robert Saleh hire to me is the one I wanted to talk about, because I think beyond my San Francisco ties, it's fascinating. He has made the decision after 1 year to go back to head coaching, and these guys don't get more than 2 opportunities unless you've had real success somewhere. It's very rare. The Titans job is a funny one to me, because I think, yes, you've got a newer GM there who seems to have a bit more control, who actually seemed to want his guy in Matt Nagy, and I'm pretty sure people will be glad that didn't happen. But he is going into a situation where the ownership isn't that much of a step up from the Jets. They're not a team who invest a huge amount of money. Yes, they are looking to move to a new stadium, which often comes with a push of cash as well. But like, I'm just hoping that Robert Saleh has learned from the mistakes of his first time round, has learned from taking other people's decisions and cast-offs, and he's already said he's going to run the play calling on the defensive side, which I think is the right move for him. But as a guy who doesn't give you a big schematic advantage on defense, he is going to have to be that great man motivator, that great acquirer of talent as well. I can really see a route to success if the offensive coordinator hire for Cam Ward is sensational, if they go and get an absolute top-tier guy. But if it's not that, if they don't end up finding the right person for Cam Ward, I worry for Robert Saleh, who I think has the potential to be a great head coach, that he has ended up with 2 of the most dysfunctional organizations in the NFL in the space of 5 years. And that might have hurt him. I might have waited another year if I was him, or hoped that maybe the Ravens got all starry-eyed when they met him, because he is a great, orator. He's a charming man. He must interview brilliantly, because he essentially interviewed Matt Nagy out of a job that it seemed was guaranteed was his. And just kind of finally on that, I don't think it should be ignored that his defense with the Jets, despite all of the problems there, was a top 3 unit all 3 years he was there. And when you are playing as a team who are consistently from behind, that is incredibly impressive. I know it was a very talented unit and that shouldn't be ignored, but much like what I said about Harbaugh, I think he raises their floor very, very quickly. This is it. In the 3 seasons he was with New York, They were first in point per drive, first in EPA per play, and third in success rate. That's despite never solving the quarterback problem, despite playing the fourth most snaps over that stretch because their offense could never stay on the field. Yeah, I think it's a good hire for them. I just worry it's not a good hire for him.
Sam, Falcons and Kevin Stefanski. Steven Kavanski is a really good spoonerism. Kevin Stefanski going to the Atlanta Falcons, and Orlando D. Ledbetter getting involved on Twitter with Baker Mayfield. The fun's only just starting, isn't it?
That's why we love this division. It is an absolute S show. It's only going to get more fun.
The NFC disgrace, yeah.
Yeah, the NFC disgrace you called it the other week is brilliant. It's one of those where I think that my team, the Colts, have been involved in like the AFC version of that, but now there's some teams that are looking to get good. So now we get to move the disgraced division to them. But I think for Stefanski, it's a really nice job. I think he wanted to go early on it, which I don't blame him for. Maybe there's a couple now that you might be looking at thinking, oh, could I maybe gone to the Bills or something like that? But I think it's going to be a great match for them. And as I said, when we did our podcast a few weeks back about which franchise would I like to go to if I was a head coach? And I picked the Falcons basically on the basis of you've got some absolute young studs there, and I think he's going to get the best out of them. And it doesn't take much to win that division, so I think it's a lovely hire.
Will, do they bring back Kyle Pitts?
I suspect they do. I've seen a lot of people trying to link him to San Francisco, actually, as you were saying, the possible issue with George Kittle not being back till late in the year. I wonder what he's going to cost, because he's a weird position in the market where he still has a ridiculously high ceiling, but actually, has he been that productive? I don't know, but you'd love to see him with a great offensive mind. And maybe that great offensive mind is Kevin Stefanski. I really like keeping Jeff Ulbrich. I think that was massive. I really like that they've brought in Bill Callahan to run the offensive line. I think that's massive. The big question mark is still the big question mark. It's been in Atlanta for 3 years now. What are you doing at quarterback? It was Michael Penix's issues last year to do with offensive guys who didn't have a clue what they were doing, who ran him in the pistol on every single play, who only had 3 different drive starters, and they were basically wide zone left, wide zone right, run up the middle. Like, they just were the most predictable offense in the NFL, never did anything interesting. Is that cost Michael Penix, or is that all he can run, and that's why they had to run that? That's going to be the decider in all of this, like it so often is. But if Michael Penix can be an average NFL quarterback, if he can be 20 or above, if he can be 16 or above in terms of where he sits in the rankings, they can be a very good team very quickly.
And the final head coaching kind of pickup or vacancy filled is the Jeff Hafley to the Miami Dolphins, which, I mean, I put it in one of the various 8 or 9 WhatsApp groups that Will Gavin and me are in together. I thought,
excuse me?
I literally, when it came to the Robert Saleh opinion this week, and there was a point at which Will Varney brought it up, brilliant producer and had been hosting the live games for us internationally, etc. Will Varney brought it up in our group that Robert Saleh had been hired, and I was like, can I post the same opinion in a third group I'm in with Ollie, having already posted it in 2 this morning? yes, I can. And I just forwarded the exact same paragraph again.
You don't even have to mention it. I'm just so used to it now. Look, in one of the ones, I said about 3 hours before the Jeff Hafley news was announced that, I think it's probably a year too soon for Hafley, because I think he probably needs to bed in with this Packers defense for an extra year. He had the Micah Parsons stuff, which maybe inflated some of the stuff that he was doing at the beginning of the season when Micah Parsons was fit and available, and it opened up the rest of the defense to do some really fun things. Now, when Parsons goes out with 5 games left of the season, Green Bay lose all 5 of those games. A couple of them did include some really good defensive performances, but there were some other defensive howlers. I think there was an issue across the offense being not spending enough time out on the field, which meant the defense just had to be on the field even more and got tired. So it's not all down on him. I think it's a really interesting hire. I think the Dolphins have gone from this really exciting offensive creative mind to potentially a really exciting defensive creative mind to run their organization. Have they gone from far too left to far too right. We can only wait and see, but I think it's a really interesting hire.
Let's just to mention the jobs that are still open. Well, we did the Bills already, but 5 other jobs still open as well. I think what we'll do with the show is we'll wait until those positions are filled and give our reaction rather than trying to predict and put which coaches are going to go in place, because you've got plenty of other places doing that. And we've already gone quite long here and we've still got to pick the games for this weekend. It's just worth a mention. Divisional round of the NFL is often talked about as being the best weekend in the NFL. And whilst I think the games delivered a little more on wild card, I think you were probably 2-2 this past weekend for really great games. And then one blowout, which I still thought was enjoyable from a great performance perspective in terms of Seattle. And then one just wild game with Texans Patriots. I do love that the Natty now falls on the Monday of divisional round weekend, because it sits so perfectly after you've just watched the 8 best teams in the NFL slog it out for a place in the championship in their conference, to then on Monday be able to get just the absolute beautiful underdog story that was the Indiana Hoosiers and that was Fernando Mendoza. And for them to go from a team who only had 6 wins in 112 attempts against top 10 ranked AP teams over the past however many years, to go 6-0 against those teams this year, to beat Miami on their own turf with their Heisman winning quarterback, who was a boyhood fan of that Miami team and went and watched them week in, week out. He was a 2-star quarterback who scrambled for a game-winning touchdown on 4th down while his mother sat in the stands with MS, screams with joy from her seat. Like, that was a moment that is just maybe the ceiling of how good sport can be. Like, it was just such a beautiful moment of joy, and it just capped off such an unbelievable weekend in general. And then him swearing afterwards, Tom Brady being there. Like, the Raiders have been as big of a dumpster fire as there is in the NFL over the past 30 years, let's be honest. I am excited about the Fernando Mendoza Las Vegas Raiders. If they get a good head coach in there now with this current carousel, I think that is a team that I will be excited about next season. I'm not saying they're going to be good, but if they can just be a 6-win team, be competitive and be fun, I think the Raiders are going to be a fun team next year.
I think as well, I found my new Tim Tebow in terms of just someone that is 100% good and just nice. And every single time I've seen a video of him and I've watched it, he just goes up more of my expectations and opinion of him just as a human. It just seems like a real nice bloke.
I think you mean Mr. Tebow. As he consistently called him on the post-game show. I also, before we want to move off the coaching hires, I do just want to read you this one tweet that I've just seen while I was bringing up some other details we had from a guy called, this is a trending tweet from a guy called East Bay Chris, who just seems to be a guy who like covers the 49ers as an influencer. So yesterday, he tweeted, "I want to be the first to congratulate and welcome Robert Saleh back as the 49ers defensive coordinator in 2029, which in itself is quite a funny tweet, right? Today, he has tweeted, this tweet has somehow made its way to Titans fans and upset them. I want to humbly apologize, as I would have never sent this out if I knew you existed."
It's upset the 4 Titan fans that there are, and we know one of them.
Absolutely brutal. Anyway, should we look forward to this weekend, Ollie?
Yeah, this weekend's going to be sensational. The championship game starts off with New England and Denver at 8 p.m. and then live on talkSPORT 2 we have the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks. Sam Harris, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with arguably the easiest route to a Super Bowl we've ever seen for the Pats.
Sorry, you mean going against 3 top 5 defenses in the same playoff run? Something that's never been achieved in the history. If they beat 3 top 5 defenses, it's the first time any team has ever done that, and they're doing it with a very thin team that was meant to be in a rebuilding year. This is a good job. If the New England Patriots reach the Super Bowl, it's a sensational story. I don't care if they're having to face a backup.
Cry me a river. They got how many turnovers did they get given on the weekend? I'm not having it. Good a defense or not. Look, either way, I kind of now, as we spoke about this earlier, Will, or yesterday, as a Colts fan, I hate the Patriots, but I love everything they're doing right now. I love their roster. I love their players. I love seeing the videos of their team talks afterwards. It's so confusing for me. But I fully expect them to get past Denver. I think it's not going to be one of those injuries which galvanizes the team. I think something's going to go wrong early for the Broncos, and I don't think Stidham's going to recover from it. I just want to see the Patriots losing the Super Bowl now, really. I'm just, yeah. That's pretty much my vested interest that I have left.
If the Patriots do make the Super Bowl, it's a revenge game either way, right? They've beaten both the Rams and the Seahawks in the last decade. Let's call it decade, 11 years, really. So, like, that's a great story in itself. I would like to go to bat for Jarrett Stidham. I would like to say now.
Really?
I'm going to caveat it before I do it, which is, of course, the worst way to give a hot take is that I wish that if this injury had to happen, if the football gods had decided and deemed that Bo Nix, despite turning me into a semi-believer in the second half of the year, was going to go down with a season-ending injury, that would have been good for it to have happened 3 weeks ago, so he'd managed to get some first-team reps prior to the AFC Championship game. He's going to be starting the AFC Championship game with just 4 starts to his name, which is the lowest number of starts in NFL history to be starting an AFC Championship game. Dan Fouts had 5, Brock Purdy had 7, I believe, but 4 is unheard of. But Jarrett Stidham is a guy who I thought should have been a starter in the NFL by now, or at least should have had a starting opportunity. And I think people are looking at the fact that he's been in the league for 5 or 6 years and hasn't had a starting opportunity as being that he can't be a good quarterback. This guy came in and he went in as the 4th round pick for the New England Patriots, 2019, and he won that backup job behind Tom Brady. On that Tom Brady, Josh McDaniels, incredibly technical, incredibly high language offense that was very, very difficult to run. They were in year 8 of those two working together on that stint, having had McDaniels there previously, of course, as the QB coach, etc. Coming in and just winning that backup quarterback job in the first place just shows you how smart this guy is. And the fact that McDaniels, when he went to the Raiders, the first thing he did was went and traded for Jarrett Stidham, kind of shows you just what a high opinion one of the great offensive minds, if not a great head coach, of course, thinks of this guy, right? He finally gets his opportunity when he goes to Denver. And he goes to Denver at a time when it's very clear that both Sean Payton believes in him, but he's going to have to play Russell Wilson. He's not got an opportunity. He's not got an option. The contract, the pressure from the city, the pressure from the owners. They've made this big decision a year earlier. You are lumbered with that quarterback. He gets to play the last 2 games of the season that year. He runs the Sean Payton system basically to perfection, and he absolutely tears apart the defenses of the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs playing their starters. They lose both those games, admittedly, but he threw for 365 yards, 3 touchdowns in a 37-34 overtime loss to the Niners, and then had over 300 yards and 2+ touchdowns against the Chiefs as well. He's a guy who has shown some good things when he got a chance to go on a field. And by the way, who played in that year's Super Bowl? The Chiefs and the 49ers. So this is a guy who we've seen games this season. We watched this Denver Broncos team in London play against the New York Jets and put up an absolute stinker on offense, be absolutely rescued by 9 sacks for minus 50+ yards for their defense, but otherwise very nearly lose to a Justin Fields-led Jets team. That's how bad they were on offense at times this year. I'm not saying that Jarrett Stidham is going to be the same level as Bo Nix or that he is going to be the best quarterback in the playoffs this weekend or any of that. But when you are such a defense-led team, can Jarrett Stidham go in there and do enough to win this game of football against a pass rush that was made to look very good by the Texans this weekend, but hasn't been that good this year? I believe in Jarrett Stidham, and I think the Broncos have a much better chance of beating the Patriots this weekend than most people are giving them.
You made a good argument.
You do make a good argument. I'm sort of leaning that way because the Denver Broncos did things very similarly 10 years ago in Super Bowl 50 in Santa Clara with Peyton Manning, who had a penne pasta for an arm, getting them to and winning the Super Bowl. And that defense in Super Bowl 50 was one of the great defenses of our time. So
I just to be clear, right? When you ask me who I'm picking in this game, I am picking the New England Patriots, but I'm just saying being 5.5-point favourites on the road against a top 3 defence in the NFL feels too rich to me. I think this is going to be a really good game of football, and Jarrett Stidham's going to surprise some people.
Okay. Sam Harris, give me a reason why and how the LA Rams can go to Lumen Field in Seattle and upset. Is it an upset? It is an upset. It's
It would be, yeah.
2.5 points favourites. The Seattle Seahawks are. Can they do something against this unbelievable Day McDonald defense?
Of course they can. When you've got arguably the MVP of this season and Sean McDermott is your coach, of course you've got a chance. Do I think they'll do it? I don't know. I still haven't made my mind up on this, and I know it's terrible for the listeners, for me not to. Maybe by the time you two have made your arguments, I might come up with something. But every time I can make an argument for one team, I'm then thinking that performance from Seattle against Wolves 49ers on the weekend was just something else. And they're feeling themselves now. They're at home. That Lumen Field is going to be loud. I mean, listen to Cam Chancellor at the start of the game the other day. The atmosphere there sounded unreal. It sounded like a college game. I just think that could be the difference here. If they get that defense going early, if they can start off with another Rashid Shaheed 96-yard touchdown, then yeah, who knows what's going to happen. But I think this is going to be such a good game. And I think by the time it comes on, we may be a couple of beers deep, all a bit jolly, because we're going to have a really good day, a really good evening watching that one. But yeah, I think, do you know what? I'm going to put my neck on the line now. I'm going to go with the Seahawks. But I think this could be whoever scores last wins.
In the regular season, these two teams have split the games. Seahawks won at Lumen Field, what was it, week 16? And then earlier on in the season, the Rams beat the Seahawks. Guess how many points separate them if you add those two games together?
I already know the answer, so we'll let
Come on then,
do
Sam.
it.
3?
1. 1 point. So it's a 21-19 win for the Rams earlier on in the season, and then 38-37. The Seahawks beat them.
In overtime, with the Seahawks going for a 2-point conversion. But lest we forget
that crazy game
that the Rams were there on the road and had a 2-score lead in the fourth quarter, despite did they score that special teams touchdown towards the end of the third quarter, possibly. But late in the game, a 2-touchdown lead, despite the fact that they'd really struggled on offense for about a quarter and a half at that point. It took special teams to turn that game around for the Seahawks. And look, the Seahawks defense, from what I've watched the last 2 weeks much more closely, in a year where we've had 3 unbelievable defenses, might be the best defense in the NFL. Like, they are so good and they fly around. And Nick Emmanwori is just a perfect piece to have fitted what they wanted to do. Like, Ernest Jones, sensational. They had 6 different pass breakups from 6 different players this weekend. The defensive line were brilliant. Have you seen that Gray Zabel, by the way, Leonard Williams clip that's doing the rounds on Twitter at the moment? Where Gray Zabel, so you know the Leonard Williams sack where he just broke through the center of the line up the middle and hit Brock Purdy, and it was like he was shot out of a cannon. The drive before that, Gray Zabel sits down next to him, a rookie guard, a guy who really wanted us to draft, and said, have you noticed they're sliding the protection towards you? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, they're sliding the protection to your side every time, and you're trying to beat that inside. You're still trying to beat that A gap. Why don't you just slide and just absolutely hammer the B gap? And he went, oh, it's not bad. This is an 11-year veteran who has like an unbelievable, like at least Hall of Very Good career to his name. And he's getting a rookie giving him this level of advice. And he goes out there on the next drive, does what the rookie tells him, and absolutely obliterates Brock Purdy on one of the fastest get-offs and one of the quickest snaps we've seen from an interior guy this season. It's again one of those things a little bit like you with the Patriots. If I didn't have a rooting interest against the Seahawks as a divisional rival, I'd love it even more. But I still really love it. I think this game, similarly, I just think this game's going to be really close, and I think the Rams can have the beating of them. And I think that Sean McVay can outcoach Mike McDonald on the day, and he did for a huge stretch of that game back in week 16. Was it week 16? Whatever it was.
Yeah.
Week 12. I think it was earlier. Anyway.
Seahawks was week 16.
Yeah.
The one before was, yeah.
God, it feels like so long ago now. There's been so much great football between then and now. It's ridiculous. But I think I'm picking the Seahawks as well.
So
sorry, Adam.
So Super Bowl picks. who will be playing in the Super Bowl live on talkSPORT in a couple of weeks' time. Who will be the two teams?
Patriots, Seahawks.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm going Broncos, Rams. Because I did so well.
The legendary contrarian.
Yeah, I really am. I think because of Adam Farkason, our mutual friend, big Rams fan, Hart is fully ruling head. But
I don't know, 'cause Matt Stafford had a few throws in that game that were just absolutely unreal. The Devontae Adams across his body to the sideline throw is just, for a man of his age playing in the cold, to be just making throws like that without seeming to bat an eyelid. Oh, it's really. I think
Devontae Adams will be an extra week fitter. He's coming back from that injury. He still didn't look that fit last weekend. He'll be a week fitter, I suspect. And they didn't use much of this 12.
And the defense is going to be much better.
They didn't.
And Sam Darnold could still Sam Darnold.
I'm going to pick the Rams. I'm switching to the Rams. Patriots Rams Super Bowl. Do you know what?
He took the bait.
Heart overhead. Patriots Rams Super Bowl. Give it to me. It's the game I want because it's the more fun game. I think.
I agree. I agree there.
Honestly, and Seahawks fans will hate me for saying that. It's the more fun game, not because I don't like the Seahawks. I think if it's Seahawks Patriots, and I'll say this now before we even get to it. If it's Seahawks Patriots in Super Bowl 60, give me the Seahawks by 14 plus.
Yeah.
I just think they're so designed to beat that style of team. I just think it's just going to be that hurdle too far. Rams Patriots is a much more fun game.
Yeah, I think it's a really high scoring sort of 60-point plus game. If it's the Rams Patriots,
lots more possibility for viral highlights, guys. That's all we want.
Sorry, who we want? We do.
Thanks, boys. This has perked me up a lot after spending the last 2 days. I won't describe it. Nobody, particularly in oral form, needs to hear what I've been going through the last 2 days.
Nope.
No, because I was going to say something else, but then that would definitely have to be left in, and I don't want to say that word beginning with A and ending with L on a podcast. Gentlemen, any final thoughts from either?
Well, we should mention our new sponsor, of course.
Oh, yes, of course. Will Gavin mention our new sponsor?
Look, we're getting to the last 3 games of the season. It's a huge moment in the NFL right now. We've just told you how brilliant these games look this weekend, how tight it could be. And right now, our friends at talkSPORT Bet are offering you that you get £40 in free bets when you bet £10 on any NFL market. That's £40 in free bets, whether that's first touchdown scorer, betting with the line, betting the points, whatever you're going for. You put £10 on an NFL market for new customers, and you'll get £40 in free bets. Head to talksportbet.com/NFL for all the details. As I say, it's new customers only, but £10 bet on the NFL. Put £10 in your account, put the bet on, get £40 in free bets. 18 plus, gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.